Want to learn this doll magic trick? Well, watch till the end to learn how.
What's on the docket today? What will we document?
Hello and welcome to Doll Doc. Today I will be showing you how I created my 1920s dolls. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll leave a link down below. And if you're new here, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I post a new video each week.
Let's start doctoring.
Last week there was a prop I forgot to show you. How can we saw a doll in half without a blade? I started by sketching a template on a scrap piece of styrofoam plate. I was going to add more embellishments, but decided to keep the saw pretty simple so it wouldn't distract from the box. To make the blade, I used epoxy sculpt. I chose this because I knew it could be sturdy enough when cured to go through the doll. Once I had the shape I wanted, I used some water to smooth out the surface. I added these trim pieces so the blade would catch on the lid of the box instead of going straight through to the floor. Once the epoxy sculpt cured, I painted and sealed it to match the box. Now let's make a wig. I start by making a wig cap and marking where I wanted the part. Then I glue one side of the part down. I know that pink hair isn't really 1920s, but these dolls were inspired by the 20s, and I thought since they are a magic act, why not give them some fun hair? The yarn I chose had some really nice wave to it when combed out, and waves were big in the 20s. This pink hair will actually end up being for the assistant doll, and for the magician I used the same brand of yarn, just in a purple. For her, I didn't make the yarn into wefts, but instead glued the hair directly to the scalp because I would be putting a 1920s style turban on her. I wanted to give the magician some sort of hat, but a top hat really wasn't fitting for the design I had in mind. And when I was searching through 1920s women's headwear, I saw these beautiful turbans that had usually some kind of jewelry embellishment on them, and I decided that'd be the way I'd go. And wefts might get in the way and make it too bulky, so gluing the hair directly to her scalp worked great. The only downside to all these waves is that finding the part again was a real magic trick. Now let's give these lovely ladies some faces. I start all my dolls by clipping the hair as short as possible and removing the head from the body using a hairdryer to heat up the vinyl. I then scrape out all the leftover plugs and glue from the inside with tweezers and wash off the face with pure acetone. Once that's done, I rinse the face with a little bit of warm soapy water, dry it, and then seal her with 2 to 3 layers of Mr. Super Clear. Once dried, I can start applying some contour with soft pastels. Now give that a seal and begin to sketch on the eyes and brows. I tried to keep the brows as thin as I could for this because that was really a big thing back in the 20s, is these thin, pretty much just penciled on brows. For her eyes, I chose to go with a pretty violet color because I wanted it to match her hair. So you might have guessed it, the assistant will be getting some pretty pink irises. I'm still playing around with finding my kind of eye style, so I played around with different shapes and how I layered my colors, also the different order I went in for certain steps. It's a fun process to go through. So far I've done a 1950s inspired doll and now these 1920s. So if you'd like me to continue doing these decade inspired dolls, in the comments below, let me know which decade you'd like to see next. Again, I apologize if you hear any wind in this video. This week, for some reason, it has been like a wind tunnel around my house. And I just finally had to say, okay, I've got to record this voiceover. I looked at a few references on 1920s makeup, and I saw that they had a lot of bold red lips with very accentuated cupid bows, and for the eyes, they had almost no color on them, and if they did, it was either a very muted brown or a smoky gray. Now I just go in and darken some of the colors on her eye, and I added this really pretty magenta color to give them a little pop. Now I just add some highlights to her eyes and face. For her skin highlights, I chose this pale yellow to give her highlights more of a golden look. Then, with a cotton swab, I blend out the highlight on her nose and brows. Now to darken those lips. Really make sure to be careful about not getting rid of that strong cupid's bow. That was a really main feature in the 1920s that they just loved to accentuate. I mean, some of them were pretty dramatic. I'm adding a little shadow to her eyes, and I get rid of what I don't want with my kneaded eraser and a cotton swab. A little more highlight on those irises just to give them some more life. A few years ago, I went to a Great Gatsby themed party, and it was so fun to get to do my hair and makeup in this style. Also finding a dress that was flapper themed. The whole night was just super fun. I added some more highlights to her lids. This really helps the tiny eyelashes I'll be drawing later stand out. And with a black sharp pencil, I add on her eyeliner and then very lightly sketch on the eyelashes. I also tried something new with some of the highlights in her eyes by using a white pencil. I think this really helped the eyes pop. After that was finished, I sealed her again with MSC and added on some white acrylic reflections. Then put a thin layer of gloss varnish onto her eyes and lips. Now onto her assistant. I start out with pretty much the same steps as earlier, drawing and contouring her face. Then I tried something new for the whites of her eyes, and this did not go as planned. The white pencil I had been using kept breaking every time I tried to sharpen it, and so I tried the method of taking pigment off of the pencil with a paintbrush. Now, this did not work as well as I wanted to, and I probably didn't use the right paintbrush for it, but this was the thinnest one I had. I laid it on a little too thick, so it looked a little gloppy and ended up chipping off a little bit in the end. I just didn't like how this turned out and probably won't use this method again. Luckily, I was able through the next few layers to make it look a lot better. See here, now I clean it up a little bit with the brown pencil. Some of it flakes off, which can be dusted off her face. But you know, you never learn what works until you try. Now for those pretty pink irises, I start out with my lightest color, just filling in the whole iris. Then I moved on to giving her nice red lips with that pointed Cupid's bow. In my day-to-day makeup, I sometimes still like to give myself an exaggerated Cupid's bow. I just have always loved that look. I add the same red to her waterline instead of pink this time because I knew that she'd have a lot of pink in her irises already. And then I started working on the brows, trying my best to keep them thin as possible. Sometimes it's a little hard for me because I like a good thick natural brow on a doll, but they did not go for natural in the 20s. They wanted those brows thin, which I guess that kind of circled back around in the 90s because they had some pretty thin brows too. I kind of like how styles ebb and flow throughout the decades. We'll have a few years where everyone has super thin eyebrows, then they go back to thicker natural ones, and then different types of arches. It's just so fun how style changes. Now I add some gray to her irises. This is going to help give the eyes more depth. Now add that highlight on the lid. I just love this. Since I draw on my lashes, it really does help them stand out. And maybe in the future I'll try doing 3D lashes again, but they're not my preference right now. I know a lot of doll artists use them and they look amazing, but for now I'm fond of drawing them on. I pretty much hold my breath the entire time I do this part. Now I'm going in with a darker gray over the whole top part of her eye to give the eyeball some more depth. Now to prep her body. I buffed each of the dolls down with a nail buffer to get rid of the glossy shine, and then for my assistant I needed to know where we're going to saw her in half. So I got out the box to help me figure out where that needed to be. Now, this next part, be extremely careful. I'm going to be using a jeweler's saw to cut her in half, and if you are young, please ask for a parent's help with this. Using any kind of saw or blade can be dangerous, so be extra careful. Watch out for your fingertips. Now I sand the plastic down, and I got out 2 little magnets that I had. These are actually pretty strong, and I'm going to use them to hold the doll together while she's not being cut in half. To set the magnets, I used good old epoxy sculpt again and put that down into the holes in her torso. Those little marks I gave on the magnets will help me know which end to place into the epoxy sculpt so the magnets will fit back together. The worst thing would be accidentally putting your magnets in wrong and they oppose each other instead of wanting to snap together. Now I line up her waist before I put the second magnet in so it won't attach. Because what you don't want to do is while your epoxy sculpt is still wet, try to hook the magnets together because you need them to set. For her bottom half, I decided that I wouldn't leave the French skirt on her when she gets into the box. A lot of magician's assistants have costume changes, so I mixed together some gold acrylic paint to give her kind of the bottom half of a leotard. And then I used soft pastels to blush her body after it's been coated in a layer of MSC. This really helps bring some life to the doll's skin. Here I had reattached the head to see how much weight it would give to her waist. I ended up drilling some little holes and putting in even more magnets into her waist because the one just wasn't strong enough. Now I'm going to blush the magician's body as well. When I work on a full doll body, I like to have a piece of cloth down. This helps protect the pigment that I've laid down. And after that, all we need to do is get her dressed and she's ready to go. I ended up also making some headpieces for these dolls and shoes, blinged out with some nice crystals to give them some roaring 20s bling. If you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're not already, please subscribe and turn on that notification bell. I post a new video each week. Thanks for watching!